What's goody world? I'm back with the homie Nick, Fat Electrician. I've landed, I don't know, I just landed on this one. The Berlin Wall, how communism turned East Germany into a prison state. I know Nick hates communism. Let rock.
People are probably going to get mad and call this video propaganda, but in my defense, it's not my fault. The only thing you have to do to make anti-communist propaganda is to open a history book and start reading it out loud. Today we're talking about the Berlin Wall. It is one of the greatest examples of capitalism versus communism, East versus West, hungry versus fed that the world has ever seen. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Operation Good Boy. It's a monthly subscription box. It's got all kinds of good... Are you okay? Don't puke in my office, please. Yeah, you're gonna get a treat in a second if you don't puke. Okay, hang on, 1 second. You've ruined my intro. Anyways, it comes with all kinds of cool stuff for your dog. We've got dog poop picker-upper bags. We've got a little doggy first aid kit. We've got daily multivitamins for him. And then we've got Mushu's favorite, the TRE, the treats ready to eat. These are made right here in America, and Mushu is a big fan, right? Give me a shake. Good, you didn't puke. Wonderful work. Go ahead. Good job. So yeah, if you've got a dog, go check out Operation Good Boy. I'll have a link and a discount code in the description down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the biggest logistical flex of all time, that being the Berlin airlift, when the USSR tried to blockade off West Berlin to force them to become communist and to join the USSR, and America and the UK teamed up to deliver them supplies using only cargo planes, landing a cargo plane into West Berlin every 2 minutes, all day, every day for 15 months straight, feeding and supplying an entire city with 4.6 billion pounds of supplies. If you want to watch that full video, I'll have that linked right here. If not, that's fine. Here's the bare minimum background info that you need. Right after World War II, Germany was basically split into two pieces. You had the Western powers, America, the UK, and France, controlling the western half of Germany, and you had the USSR controlling the eastern half. And here's where that gets weird. They did the same exact thing with the city of Berlin, where the West controlled the western half and the USSR controlled the eastern half, except Berlin was 100 miles into the USSR territory. And this is why the USSR blockaded off West Berlin and tried to force them to join, because they didn't want a little speck of capitalism in their communist utopia. But the West isn't about to back down from a challenge, so America and the UK team up, Wonder Twin powers activate, they launch the Berlin airlift, they feed an entire city using nothing but cargo planes, and after 15 months, the USSR is finally forced to end the blockade because they can't afford to try to stop them anymore. So in 1949, the roads and railways to West Berlin open back up and everything goes back to working exactly how it was supposed to, and this is where the story really begins. From 1949 to 1951, we had what was known as a green border between East and West Germany. Basically, there was a border there. They're two separate countries.
West Germany, all the great vintage frames came from there. All the great vintage sunglasses came from West Germany. If you ever come across a vintage pair of Cashapp, on the inside temple, it'll say W.Germany, West Germany. That's how you know you got you a good vintage. Because when the wall came down, they started just going back to Germany, just made in Germany, opposed to made in West Germany. I don't know what they made in East Germany. I ain't never got a pair of frames that said East Germany. Everything was made in the West.
Countries. However, it was very, very easy to go from one country to the other and back. It was no big deal at all, which was really important because you have to remember, they just drew an arbitrary line right through the middle of Germany and were like, hey, these are two separate countries now. It was really complicated for a lot of people. You had people that had family members that now live in a different country. You had people whose home was in one country and job was in the other. You had farmers and property owners that now owned property in a country that they didn't live in. It was very, very complicated. And while the border is essentially open, a ton of people from East Germany are taking advantage of it and migrating to West Germany because it's way, way better to live in West Germany, where the evil capitalist pigs from America and the UK have been funneling in billions of dollars worth of food, money, and resources, helping to build West Germany back up as a country, as opposed to the USSR over in East Germany, who has done the exact opposite because they said, hey, we want our war reparations and we want them right now. The USSR takes over $10 billion worth of hard assets and natural resources out of the East German economy and ships it back home. That is a third of the working capital of the entire country. Quite literally just took a third of their economy and got rid of it. And if that wasn't bad enough, they also liquidated almost every factory in East Germany. They took all of the machinery, all the parts, all the material that they had and shipped it back home to
That kind of answers my question.
the USSR. Not only have they stripped East Germany of all of their product, they've stripped them of their ability to produce. They can't even work themselves out of this difficult situation. Because of this, understandably so, people start leaving East Germany in droves. Now, by 1952, the USSR identifies this problem, understanding, oh shit, obviously our policies aren't very popular. We should probably do something about that. The only question is, what are we gonna do about it? Do we A, come up with new policies that incentivize people to stay, making them want to be there and making them want to be a productive member of this society? No, absolutely not. We're gonna go with option B, old reliable, good old-fashioned human rights violations. Okay, so here's the plan. We're gonna shut down the border between East and West Germany. We're gonna build a wall or a fence. And I know what you're thinking, walls don't work. Well, if the wall doesn't work, you know what is gonna work? The landmines that we put on the...
I gotta say this. Shouts out to human rights. Shouts out to humans making their own rights and saying, shit, the world better abide by it. Shouts out to us. Man, shout out to us.
Walls don't work. Well, if the wall doesn't work, you know what is going to work? The landmines that we put on the other side of it. And if that doesn't work, we're going to get guard dogs. And if the guard dogs don't work, we're going to put up a bunch of guard towers, and we're going to have over 20,000 men with guns watching the border 24/7 all the time, and they have the authority to shoot anyone trying to escape on site. Now, obviously, there's one glaring hole in this plan. What if somebody is able to get past the wall, navigate through a minefield, evade the dogs, and they get seen by the guard, but because the guard is an East German and he probably doesn't want to be in East Germany either, what if the guard just doesn't shoot him and lets him go over to West Germany? Well, that's where the giant sand pit comes in. We're gonna line the entire border between East and West Germany with a 30-foot wide pad of sand. And that way we'll be able to see any footprints when somebody runs out of East Germany into the West. And then we're going to know that somebody escaped, and we're going to hold the guard on duty for that sector responsible, and then he's going to get in trouble. Buh! Having a very secure border isn't a human rights violation. Buh! Well, right, when you're using it to keep people out, but when you're using it to keep people in, it's absolutely a human rights violation according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Let me just read that for you. Article 13, Section 2, quote, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and return to his country, end quote. So yes, turning an entire country into a prison and refusing to let anyone leave while you oppress them is in fact a human rights violation. However, to be completely intellectually honest, I do have to tell you that the Soviet Union is one of only 3 nations that refused to sign the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and they refused to sign it specifically because of Article 13, Section 2, which I
was just thinking this in the car the other day. Well, yesterday. So just bear with me, y'all. Y'all know I like to ramble. It's crazy to think that in a world where everyone's in competition, I'm going to use the auto industry, for instance. You got Honda, who's going against Toyota, who's going against Chevy, Chevy's going against GMC, and this going against this, and Kia's going against Mitsubishi, and all these people are in competition, just like the world leaders and the world cultures and countries. But at some point, they all have to come together and say, okay, look, I know we don't like each other, but we got to lay some ground rules. Again, automobile industry. Look, I think my car is better than yours, and I know you think yours is better than mine. I know you don't like me, but we got to agree on some things so this shit makes sense. We need to make brakes the same. We need to make steering the same. We got to come together as ops and create this monopoly for us, this monopoly game for us only to play in. And once we figure out these ground rules, we can go back to hating each other. Like, hey guys, the rearview mirrors got to be the same, tires got to be the same, bolt patterns got to be the same, lug nuts got to be, we got to agree on this. If we don't agree on this, you're going to get left out. So just imagine one company, imagine Honda saying, hell no, I don't want to do that. Y'all can do all that. I ain't going to do it. And then they just go out of business because they just, once they sell a car and somebody go to AutoZone to buy a part, they can't find the part because they didn't agree to the treaty. They didn't agree to the agreements. That's crazy to me. These folks are at war, but then they say, okay, look, before we go to war, let's just sign this. Let your lay these laws down, and and if you don't agree with it, then we got to come at you and take you out. That's amazing to me. That's my rant for today. Let's rock.
Of human rights, and they refused to sign it specifically because of Article 13, Section 2, which I just read to you. They basically said that they would only consider signing it if this was added to the end of Article 13. Quote, in accordance with the procedure laid down in each country, end quote. They were unanimously declined because that would ruin the entire point of Article 13, which would basically just mean that, yeah, you have a human right to leave a country unless that country tells you you can't. So what's the point of even having that as a human right? So the border is pretty much completely shut down. The only exceptions to that are the fact that you can apply for a visa to leave East Germany. However, it's very expensive. You get interrogated by the government, and the only people to actually get these visas awarded to them are people that are working on behalf of the Communist Party or somebody that is obscenely rich and is for sure coming back anyways, which seems like a weird hypocritical policy for a communist regime whose ultimate goal is to have a moneyless, classless society where everybody is treated equally to have, but whatever. And then of course they have to allow travel from West Germany into West Berlin, and to do that there's very, very strict routes. Anybody traveling from West Germany to West Berlin,
again, one of those things, visas. Somebody came up with visa, and then somebody said, hey bro, I gotta find a way to get all the countries to agree to this. This is just somebody's idea. Hey, you know what? What if everybody had a visa to go from and countries that hate each other had to sit down and say, all right, that sounds like a good idea. We'll implement it. And then go back to disliking each other. That don't blow y'all mind. Passports and IDs and money. Like, somebody came up with this stuff and then said, okay, let's go get everybody who hate us and sell them this. And if they go with it, I promise, they probably told the ops, I promise you, if you go with this, yeah, we might go to war, but I promise you, you will flourish from this. Even if you lose the war, you're going to flourish, because we're just laying down laws that's just going to go on for ages and ages. It protects us more than it does hurt us. Trust me. Visas, passports, money. Trust me. Not only that, guess what? We're going to go to war behind the money too. The money we're making up right now, we'll go to war about it. But trust me, the visa, the passport shit, it all play out in your favor. Insane to me. Insane.
And has to take, and they have to go.
I might be tripping. Y'all tell me if I'm tripping, but that's not crazy to y'all. That's crazy, man.
Go straight from one straight to the other, and they hit multiple checkpoints along the way. And this is extremely important because it opens up the Berlin loophole, because Berlin, the city that's 100 miles into communist territory, has that little speck of capitalism in it, and there's no border between West Berlin and East Berlin. So you can literally just walk from East Berlin right into West Berlin, and it's not an issue at all. So that becomes the only way to escape East Germany. People travel to East Berlin and then simply walk into West Berlin, and then they catch a car or a train or a bus from West Berlin to West Germany, and then they never go back. And between 1952 and 1961, somewhere between 2 and 4 million people do this. Bear in mind, East Germany only has a population of 17 million. That's over 20% of the population walks into West Berlin and never comes back. And of the people that did leave, they were disproportionately young, highly skilled, highly intelligent people like doctors, lawyers, skilled tradesmen, engineers. And because of this got the nickname the brain drain. So in 1961, the USSR is like, oh shit, this is a humongous problem. All the young, smart people are leaving. We got to do something about this. Should we, I don't know, incentivize highly successful young people to want to stay here? Nah. Break out old reliable, more human rights violations for everybody. So August 13th, 1961, in the middle of the night, a bunch of East German construction workers and cops show up with guns, and they put a fence all the way around West Berlin. Not to keep the West Berliners in, but to keep the East Berliners out. And East and West Berlin at this point in time were still very much intertwined. There were people that lived in the East and worked in the West and vice versa, and there were people that had family members on one side or the other side, and there were people that owned businesses and property. There were people that were seeing relatives and got separated from their families, and they weren't allowed to get back on the other side of the wall. There were literally thousands of people in Berlin that woke up one day and it was just like, congratulations, you just lost your job, you just lost your property, you lost your business, you're now separated from your family. Because of this, people started trying to break into West Berlin, or they were breaking out into East Berlin to get people and bring them back into West Berlin. At first it was easy because it was just a fence and you could cut your way through through it or you could scale it, but that fence rapidly turned into a 12-foot high concrete wall. And then when people started bringing ladders to scale over the top of it, they added a gigantic round metal top to it so there was nothing to grip and pull yourself over. And then they added barbed wire and guard towers and guards that were allowed to shoot you on sight and turned it into a full-on demarcation line around West Berlin. And that is when the escape attempts got incredibly creative. One of the more popular ones at the very beginning was that somebody from West Berlin would remove the gas tank from their car and they would just have a little 1-gallon jug for gas, just enough gas to drive into East Berlin, pick somebody up, and drive back to the west. And the person would be strapped up underneath the car where the gas tank was supposed to be. But then the communists figured that out, and then they had the guards at every checkpoint before a car could go into West Berlin. They would take a flexible metal wire and shove it down into where the gas tank should be to make sure it was in fact a gas tank. So then that plan was out. So one guy decided he was going to take his BMW Isetta, cut the roof off, and then he was just going to drive right underneath the checkpoint going full speed, and he was going to duck, and that's how he was going to break into West Berlin, and that's exactly what he did. And because of this, the East German...
Nick, I know you lying to me. Nick, I know you lying to me. Ain't no way that worked. Ain't no way Mr. Bean chopped the top off and rolled under the pole and said, I'm past the pole now, you can't do nothing. There's no way that worked.
Gonna duck, and that's how he was gonna break into West Berlin, and that's exactly what he did. And because of this, the East Germans added spike strips and barricades to every checkpoint. Every time somebody escaped into West Berlin, the communists fixed however it was possible. They made it more and more difficult, and the escape attempts got more and more creative. Some of my personal favorites include shooting a steel cable over the wall from a high building and then ziplining to the other side, having somebody from West Berlin get a cow costume and tow a cattle trailer into East Berlin, and then have two of his friends dress up in the cow costume and stand in the cattle trailer as they made it through the checkpoint, stealing a tank and trying to drive it through the wall. And when you got away from the Berlin Wall itself and you actually went to the East and West German border, the escape attempts got even crazier. One group of brothers took a farmer's crop duster, painted it like a Soviet MiG plane, flew it from West Germany into East Germany, picked up their other brother, and flew him back. And my absolute personal favorite escape from communism was when two fathers got together and for a year and a half gathered fabric and propane and supplies so that they could build a fucking hot air balloon to escape to West Germany. Okay, I'm gonna say that again, but a little bit slower. 8 people, 2 families, 2 fathers, 2 mothers, and 4 children escaped communism using a hot air balloon. Do you understand the gravity of what I've just told you? Because as a husband and a dad, it speaks volumes to me that 2 men in my situation got together, looked around, and said these living conditions are so horrific that the best bet for me and you and our wives and our kids is to secretly gather up a bunch of cotton fabric, aka flammable shit, sew it into a balloon, attach it to a wicker basket, more flammable shit, and then propel it with a fucking flamethrower as we try to get away as fast as the wind will take us while the guards are shooting at us. Okay, look, all I'm saying is I've never seen anybody that determined to escape capitalism. That's all I'm saying. Buh! But that's not real communism. Buh! Of course it's not, because it's never real communism whenever something goes bad. But whenever something goes bad under capitalism, it's 100% capitalism's fault, and we should get rid of it and do communism instead. Granted, communism every other time we've tried it's ended in genocide and murder and human rights violations, but hey, I'm feeling it this time, guys. We're this close to just 1, maybe 2 more genocides, and we're gonna have that communist utopia. We should keep trying. No. I can't. I need a beer. Jesus.
Oh, God.
Sorry, I got carried away. I apologize. Anyways, the wall around Berlin gets more and more impenetrable, and eventually the only way to actually escape into West Berlin is to dig a tunnel and crawl your way out, which a ton of people did. Now, obviously, this is a PR nightmare. The communists have to explain to everybody why on earth they blocked off West Berlin and they're not letting anybody through, and because of that, they decide to give the Berlin Wall their name, the Anti-Fascist Rampart. Fascism, obviously referring to Nazis, which makes this, I believe, one of the first historical appearances of the unfortunately still prevalent line of thinking that anybody that disagrees with me or how I live my life or my politics must be a Nazi. Yeah, that was the official stance of the Soviet Union, basically accusing every Western power of being a fascist regime and saying they built the wall to, quote, protect against fascist elements conspiring to prevent the will of the people, despite the fact that the apparent will of the people was to leave their communist regime, but whatever. Just excuse me one more time. I'm so sorry. I just have to Google something real quick. How to recognize a cult. Absolute authoritarianism without accountability. Check. Zero tolerance for criticism or questions, like getting arrested for political jokes. So I'm going to go with check. Lack of meaningful financial disclosure regarding the budget. Check. Unreasonable fears about the outside world that often involve evil conspiracies and persecutions. Check. Okay. Sorry.
I gotta say this. Sorry, y'all. Another rant. The human language fascinates me, man. Somebody, at some point in time, long before us, came up with these words that I'm saying right now. The things I'm saying out of my mouth, like thing. Somebody came up with that word, thing. Somebody came up with that word, thing. They came up with every single word. They taught it to a group of people, and it became the language of the people. Just random shit just pulled out the air. Y'all cannot convince me that languages aren't just somebody before language. Somebody woke up one day and said, "Earth, rocks, this damn gnat." They said that, and said, "I'm gonna make sure everybody around me talks like me." And they did it. Language blows my mind, bruh. It blows my mind. It's making me want to get into the study of the brain, bruh. Because what? It just blows my mind. I'm sorry, y'all. I just had to say that. Like what he's saying, cult. Somebody came up with the word cult. They gonna give you, oh, it stems from this Greek word and it stems from this Latin, whatever. Somebody came up with the term and then gave it a definition. A person just like me and you came up with the definition of things. That shit is amazing to me. And we live by it. We go to prison behind it. We get out of prison behind it. We go to school with it. We learn. We earn money. We make a living. It just blows my mind, y'all. I'm sorry. Rant done.
Financial disclosure regarding the budget. Check. Unreasonable fears about the outside world that often involve evil conspiracies and persecutions. Check. Okay, sorry. Anyways, back to the video. Despite all the propaganda saying the Western world was literally just a bunch of Nazis, most people in East Germany didn't buy it, and a ton of them still tried to escape to the West. Over the duration of the Berlin Wall, over 100,000 people would be captured and imprisoned for either telling political jokes, criticizing the government, or attempting to escape. In just a couple years, by 1964, these political prisoners were starting to stack up really quickly, and the USSR had to do something about it because it was costing them money and the prisons were full and they had to get rid of all these people. So I mean, what's a communist regime to do? Well, that's easy. We've got all these prisoners that we don't want. They don't want to be here. Let's ransom them over to the West. And that's exactly what they do. They ransomed 33,000 political prisoners to the West, and the West paid on average 4,000 Deutschmarks per person. I say on average because it wasn't a static price. The USSR put different values on different people based on their skills and job set. For example, a general laborer might only bring 1,800 Deutschmarks, whereas a doctor could bring 15,000. Now, granted, I'm probably reading way too far into this, but I do find it a tiny bit hypocritical that the communist government, the same government that supposedly is striving to create a moneyless, classless society where everybody is equal, is also taking political prisoners, assigning different values on their life based on their ability to produce an economic output, almost like they're putting them into separate classes, implying that some people are worth more than others, and then they're turning around and trying to sell them to another government for money, which is allegedly something else they don't want, which is, you know, weird. It's almost like it's all a bunch of talking points and bullshit so they can have a bunch of control.
Again, I think that's what all this shit is. Somebody came up with all of this just trying to gain power. Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. We weren't there to experience if it worked or not. Some books was written, some history was told, some stories was passed down. We got to run with what we got. But that's how I feel about all of this stuff.
I can do this all day.
All day.
How long? What is it going to take to convince you that communism is bullshit? Tell me. I'll do it.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good call!
In addition to the 33,000 political prisoners that the USSR essentially auctioned off for money, they also agreed to release 215,000 East German citizens for the low price of 2.3 billion Deutschmarks. Between 1945 and 1989, over 600 Germans were killed either trying to cross the border from East to West Germany or from East to West Berlin. And that is considered to be a very low, very conservative number because the USSR didn't want to release the actual numbers or admit that they'd killed anyone, because every single person they killed trying to escape communism was a huge political hit to them. Which raises the question, what happened in 1989? Well, that's the best part of the whole story. By 1989, the Soviet Union was going bankrupt, they were beginning to crumble, they were losing their sphere of influence, and more civil unrest started to occur. And by November of 1989, in East Germany, there were protests, people demanding that they had the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the ability to critique their government without...
This is what I learned in my vintage sunglasses learning experience. This is the part that it kicks in. This is the shit that I did learn, actually.
Getting arrested, and most importantly, the freedom of travel. The communist government knew that they had to give the people an inch before the people turned around and took a mile, and the 1 inch they were willing to give them was they were going to get rid of the travel ban and finally start granting people visas. They weren't going to charge them money, they weren't going to have some special circumstance to do it, and most importantly, they were actually going to approve people, and they were going to do it quickly. These new travel regulations were drafted on November 8th, they were going to be announced to the public on November 9th on live TV, and on November 10th they would go into effect, and people could show up to the passport office, apply, and ideally get accepted and have the freedom to travel west. And that's kind of what happened. November 8th, the new regulations get drafted, that's fine. November 9th, they hand the new regulations to a government spokesperson by the name of Gunter Schabowski, and he's going to read them on a government press conference on live TV. He didn't have time to read through all the papers, nobody took the time to explain it to him, so on live TV, he just kind of wings it.
We'll do it live!
He reads off what he thinks is important, which is just, here's the new rules that we're living by, and everybody's like pretty happy about it, and one journalist asks, when does this go into effect? And Gunter, not having time to have read through all the papers, kind of shuffles through them real quick, looking for an effective date, and which he doesn't see one. It's there, he just doesn't see it. So he just kind of shrugs and he's like, as far as I know, quote, immediately, without delay.
Das tritt nach meiner Kenntnis ist das sofort.
And with that,
look at how unserious the people who make the rules are. Imagine you find a way to control everybody in your country, and you get so comfortable and lax that you let this shit just fall through the cracks. That's just so human. Ain't that so human? Ain't that just like, whatever, they gonna take whatever we say. That you don't even prep your boy on this.
Going out on live TV, East Germans got up and started going to the wall. Now, this announcement was at the ass end of a boring government press conference, so not a lot of people saw it, but then the news outlets started picking it up and they started airing it, both in East and West Germany, and then even more people started showing up on both sides of the wall. And within just a few hours, tens of thousands of people had shown up to Checkpoint Charlie, one of the main checkpoints for the Berlin Wall, to go from East to West, and they demanded to be let go because they had just been told by their government on live TV that they had the freedom of travel, and the guards had no idea what was going on, and they were outnumbered tens of thousands to 1. And eventually the guards were forced to simply let people through, and then word spread that they actually let them through, and all of Berlin, both East and West, came out and had basically the biggest block party the world has ever seen.
I'm sorry, y'all. Again, I'm on my language rant. The power of language, the power of talking. These folks killed allegedly 600 people trying to cross because somebody spoke words and told them to do that. Then check this out. Listen to this shit. The government send somebody who don't know what's going on TV. His words opens up the floodgates, right? But check this out. The people who man the floodgates didn't hear it. So here comes thousands of people with their words, just words, saying, hey, you know, your boss just said these words. So you have to do it. And enough people said it that the people manning the floodgates opened them simply because of words that a man made up. They went from killing people to not just because of words. I know it's more complicated than that, y'all, but it's not. It's not more complicated than that. That's what happened. These folks are happy because they talked. They said what they heard, and them folks let them through. That shit is crazy.
Both East and West came out and had basically the biggest block party the world has ever seen, as a city that had been divided in half for 28 years was finally reunited. And then they celebrated this reunification by tearing down the wall that had separated them for so long. In conclusion, Germany after World War II is the closest thing to a controlled experiment that you can have, pitting capitalism against communism to see which one would triumph in real life. They took one country with one people, divided it down the middle, and gave each a set of rules to live by. And while capitalism is far from perfect and it has a ton of things that we can improve upon, I think the results of this experiment speak for themselves. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
Or talk to me now. Y'all said, come on. Nick ain't coming back. What just happened? Nick switched up on me. Okay. Yeah. And I feel you on that last part, Nick. It's like somebody came up with communism. Somebody came up with capitalism. I wonder how many other isms there are in the world that people... There's somebody right now being born that's going to come up with the ism that 80 years from now the world's going to be like, this is the right ism. Ain't that don't blow y'all mind? That's amazing to me. That's going to happen. I'm calm. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You know what also blows my mind? How the world leaders have to come together and then they manage to keep everyone under just this group or that group. Like they minimalize all these people on the planet, all these brains, all these thoughts, all this power we have. They find a way to keep us like confined within these social groups, like here in the United States, Republican and Democrat. Yeah, you got this one and that other one, but at the end of the day, is Republican. Those are the big boxes to check. That's amazing. You would think that every single person would have their own view. It's just like, nah, let's just create a gang. Let's go out and spew and manipulate media and try to get everybody to join our gang. And then that's how we gonna keep control of what's going on. So, but I feel him though. It's like, okay, so cool. This dude created this group. This dude created this group. Let's see which one thrives. Okay, communism didn't thrive. Capitalism did. Maybe the incentives that capitalism offers is why we got mega grunts who can go and destroy communism. I don't know. It's amazing. Like, comment, share, subscribe. That was great. Catch y'all on the next one, y'all. I'm out. Peace.